Hello everyone, this is Ryan Chiswick Perfect Death here, and well, I decided I would also show off my other most favorite Paradox Grand Strategy game, Hearts of Iron 3. This one is running the Historical Plausibility project, which is a mod that adds mostly new features to the AI and the kind of things that can happen during the game, which makes things very interesting for alternative history. You can already notice if you have played the original Hearts of Iron, the names of some of these countries are different. Like Germany is the German Reich, and the Kingdom of Italy is an actual kingdom now. And there's a few different things that have gone on in particular. I will actually just jump over here to demonstrate one of them. In the HPP mod, there normally is a skirmish that goes on between the Soviet Union and Japan in like 1938, 1939, where they fight over some borders around Mongolia. And normally it's just a skirmish. In the normal game, it doesn't even enter into an open conflict. But in the HPP mod, they do fight each other. And if they both decide to escalate the conflict, that war can keep going into a full-out war. Which in this specific game, as I was playing as Italy, Japan entered into a full-out war with the Soviet Union in 1939, and that has not gone well for them. Fortunately, Germany decided to launch Operation Barbarossa, and has been pushing back the Russians, and we have made quite a bit of progress. Right here is Leningrad, and he's taken over a lot of Leningrad. He has almost encircled Moscow, and I basically secured Stalingrad. So in Hearts of Iron, if you want to defeat your enemy, what you need to do is to cause their surrender progress to go basically full. And then you can gain your full victory over top of them. And to do that, you need to hold important cities. And right now, they have 76.8% of their important cities occupied. Well, their national unity is 79.4. You don't need to take all of their important cities unless they had 100% national unity. But Russia does not have full unity, so we do not need to take all of their cities. We have 61% of them. And if you want to actually take a look at that, you go to the VP, Victory Point map node, and you can see these little spots. So we've already taken a whole bunch of his spots. Most of Russia's victory points are in the in the sort of eastern front area, the west of Russia. And he's got two right there that are close by, and another one there, which is also close by. So if we can take... We might even win if we take Moscow, because it is worth 30 victory points. So, but it's not it depends how you calculate it. It's about the number of important cities. So we probably have to take some more cities along that. But this could be the turning point. A lot of us have basically run out of supply. When I came in here to help out in Stalingrad, because I'm in German lines, my port here cannot actually supply my troops here, and this little red icon basically tells me that these guys have no supplies. I look at my Marines here, they do have a little bit of supplies. See, these guys have a very small amount of it. They don't need any fuel, but for actual munitions, they have 0 days left of munitions because they only have like 3.36 of it. So the Russians aren't going to attack me because they can still fight back, but they're tired, their organization isn't great, and I have no way of really resupplying them from here. These guys, I can supply them, but it's all mountains. You can see the gray, the brown is hills. So supplies, the way that it works in this game is based on a mix of infrastructure and terrain. So the greener it is, the better the infrastructure. The redder it is, the worse it is, until you get to like black here, where there's only like level 1 or 0 infrastructure. Like right here is 0 infrastructure. So This is very difficult terrain to be fighting over. And we can actually go over to the supply map node, which will show where my supplies are coming from. Your supplies will spawn from your capital, which for me is Rome. And they can instantly travel around from all of these different little spots just within the area around it. And then after that, you can see here I can only move 1,350 supplies and fuel per day along this province here. And that's because, come on, infrastructure, he's max infrastructure. So if I look at this guy who's 2 infrastructure short, and I were to see how much he can move, he can only do 864 versus, you know, some of these other guys who have full infrastructure. So when you are, you know, designing your economy before you go to war, usually you'll want to extend the roads. I actually extended the infrastructure to max level all the way to the port of Taranto, and that is because from here you can see that I have a lot of these red lines going out. The red lines means that supplies are being pushed through that port. Green is our trade convoys bringing things in, resources in. Red are for supplies, and you can even see the different makeup of what's being shipped out. And so from these ports, they are sending supplies out to like these places here and to my various other islands, and even all the way down to what I have in Ethiopia and Iraq. Now the ports themselves will also have a limit of how much they can ship out. So the port here can ship 103.5 units of supply and fuel per day, while the one above it, which is a level 1 port, can only do 10.35 supply per day. So these ports here, they're not really getting as much as they could. If I look, the ones feeding this guy come all the way from this little guy here, which is why I just have no supplies there. So I could manually go into my convoy thing and create a convoy by saying, auto create supply convoy, create one, and then go and pick one like Napoli here, and it'll ask me where destination is. So then I would have to go and look and say, okay, the destination is Batumi. So I think, I don't have him created here, so create him. So I would go like Napoli to Batumi. Well, I don't think he's available on here because there's already a convoy like that going. So if you already have a convoy, they don't really let you do a duplicate to it. Which is a little weird at times because the ports can receive an infinite amount of supplies. It's just a matter of sending it out there. But I haven't quite got the full convoy thing down, so I just have it as auto and hope it figures out the best. So in general, I like the Russians here, they have no way of resupplying themselves. I'm just mopping them up at this point. We're trying to contain them in the Caucasus, kick them out of their oil, which they get from Baki. And unfortunately, Iran, when they joined us, India came in and is now kicking poor India's teeth in. I puppeted Iraq from the UK, just so that we could have another guy over here to try and help us out. And since Japan has been really occupied with the Soviets, they didn't join us against the Allies, the British and the Dutch, which has turned out really good because they also haven't gone to war with the United States of America. It's January the 7th. And, historically, the attack on Pearl Harbor happened like a month earlier than this. So, Japan's basically going to forfeit the Pearl Harbor most likely they're not going to ever bother with America, and America's may join. He may not have a reason to join into this. It's been going very well for me in particular. Within the first few months, I was able to kick the British out of the Mediterranean. You can see that I have basically secured the Suez rebel spawn that I'm cleaning up right now. Germany landed a paratrooper here, which was really weird because he had no way of resupplying this paratrooper. But eventually I ended up seizing the Suez Canal, and then I came in over here and took over Jordan. And this mod in particular made it so that there's a lot more other territories. Like Syria actually exists, Jordan existed, Transjordan exists, same with Lebanon, even though they're considered colonies of like France. India is no longer just a giant blob of United Kingdom anymore. It's actually its own thing, which is really troublesome because you actually have to fight big armies of India now. Before, you would have to rely on Britain actually deploying troops to India and moving them around. It made it really hard for them to defend like Egypt. But Egypt put up a bit of a fight because Egypt and all of these other little Middle Eastern states sent their militias over to try and stop me when I went to war with them. And at the very beginning of this game is Italy. You start off at war with Ethiopia, and I ended up after conquering Ethiopia, I released him into a puppet, and he actually has a port up here now. And the reason I did this was because he will spawn supplies. And that kept all of these guys over here supplied, because when we go to war with Britain, we can't supply through the Suez, and we cannot supply through Gibraltar because they're both held by the United Kingdom. So it was the reason I held Ethiopia was because I released Ethiopia and left a big garrison down here. The army that invaded stayed. I didn't bring them back up. Did make it a little harder to take care of places like Greece and Egypt. I did go to war pretty early with Yugoslavia. I puppeted him after I made sure he gave me my claims along the coast. And yeah, I managed to kick out the British, which was tricky. It was a very nasty naval fight, and historically it was. But I learned from why it was such a defeat for the Italians, and one of the reasons was radar. In this game you can research radar and you can build radar stations, and I stuck one in Palermo in Sicily. And what this will do is it will detect aircraft and ships that are moving around this area. And this was very useful because this is right next to where Malta was, and also I could see anything heading over to Alexandria and through the Mediterranean, and I could intercept them. And I had some formations of naval bombers here. Do I have them? Yeah, so I still do have some of my naval bombers hanging around, but I've moved them to Gibraltar along with my light bombers and my light fighters, my interceptors. But before, I just had them all stationed here, and they would either suppress, my interceptors would suppress any aircraft that he had, and also suppress his aircraft carriers. I did not have carriers, he did, which made it very difficult to fight the British on the seas. So I relied on spotting where his ships were and sending my bombers at him in combination with my naval ships. Because I had no carriers, I had to rely on land bases for air support. And eventually I took a bit of France, took over a whole bunch of this, and I've managed to push the British all the way out to about here. And then I kind of botched up. I left Ethiopia to the AI. In Hearts of Iron 3, you can basically create theaters, and I'll show you the theater map nodes. I have 3 different theaters right now. My European one, my North African, and my East African theater. and you can set them to be controlled by the AI, give them different stances, and the AI will try and figure out where to put the troops. You give them, things like, say, go here, and they will try to send troops there, or in particular I said go down to here. And they were able to clear out the Europeans all on their own, except for this one port here of Dar es Salaam. And that was because this province right here, I will actually switch to the infrastructure. This province had the same infrastructure as this one, which was a level 1, and troops cannot move through level 1 infrastructure. So I didn't realize that, and I paradropped paratroopers onto this spot, and they ended up being unable to attack because they didn't have the infrastructure to hold any supplies, so I had to withdraw them. But it gave me control over this spot, and then I upgraded the infrastructure of it, and then as soon as it got to level 2, I rushed my paratroopers in to secure this spot here. And now it's opened up a ground route that combines this whole coastline here. Unfortunately, while I was doing this, I was trying to encircle this port here, and the AI decided that it was a brilliant idea to drop 4 divisions of infantry in Utet here. And that did not go very well, because if they wanted to attack Dar es Salaam, these guys in mountains, and there was a river here, so I would suffer a river crossing penalty, which is why I was trying to attack from this direction. Unfortunately, while I was replanning all of this, Britain and his allies dropped a metric butt-ton of troops in this area. He is only supplying them through one port, and this is like a really low-level port. And I have been, harassing this port. I've got a couple naval groups here. Brought some of my naval bombers down here, a tactical bombing group here, a fighter interceptor to keep these guys suppressed. And most importantly, I had to bring keep my transport planes here. They were here to drop the paratroopers, but now their job is air supplying these poor bastards, because they have no way of keeping in supply unless I manually drop them from here down to here. So what I've been trying to do now is establish a naval base so that we can actually start dropping convoys here. I did not want to get stuck here. My transport planes need to be up here. I need to have them in Russia, dropping supplies for my troops on the Eastern Front here. And yeah, but the good thing is Britain's committing so many troops here. There's a whole lot of South Africans and Belgian troops here. The British are also really committing to a Norwegian assault, which has been going very slow for them because it's a lot of forests, hills, and mountains here. So this is giving us hopefully enough time to deal with the Soviet Union. I also do hope that Japan can make a bit of a counterattack. He might not. Russia has brought a lot of tanks and motorized units to this front. Let's see, because if he can get some of these little territories like Busan and of course these 2 big cities here, if he can get those back, that will make Russia surrender even faster. But I mean, Japan has finally been getting some headway down south here, and the faster he can do that, the faster he can commit more to the Soviet Union. So it is a little weird of a situation we're in. Romania hasn't joined the Axis. America hasn't joined. No one's declared war on him yet. So it's a bit of an interesting alternate history. This spot here is also kind of the same as what I was talking about down here. You can't cross through it, so it's literally severs this North Africa from the